What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected icons takes her seat for what should have been a safe, routine interview, only to find herself in the middle of the most explosive confrontation daytime TV has ever seen? The world was about to witness a showdown so raw, so unfiltered, and so brutally real that it left the studio audience silent and millions of viewers at home in disbelief. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. It helps more than you know. Now, let's get back to the story. Because trust me, this isn't just an interview. It's a cultural earthquake caught on live television. The morning at The View began like any other. The cameras were polished, the crew buzzing, and producers believed they had lined up a simple, polished segment. Academy Award winner Meyer Street, beloved, respected, admired, was booked to promote her latest project. The studio audience expected grace, poise, and perhaps a few heartfelt reflections. What they got instead was something far beyond imagination. Joy Behar, in her usual seat, wore that familiar smirk, the one longtime viewers recognized instantly. It was her trademark look before stirring controversy, and everyone in the room could sense she was itching for a fight. With exaggerated interest, she leaned forward, her voice sharp enough to slice the calm air. "So, Meyer," she began, dragging out the name like a challenge. "Tell us about this new movie of yours. I have to say, when I read the synopsis, I couldn't help but wonder, is Hollywood just running out of ideas these days?" The words landed like a grenade. Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and the rest of the panel shot uneasy glances at each other. Even for Joy, this was unusually harsh, more like a jab than a question. Meyer, however, met it with a soft smile, her professionalism unshaken. "Well, Joy, I think storytelling has always revisited themes that connect to human experience," she replied, her voice calm and deliberate. "This film explores the fragility of family bonds in moments of crisis. Given what so many families have endured recently, it feels deeply relevant." Her answer was thoughtful, grounded, and honest. But Joy wasn't satisfied. She rolled her eyes and waved her hand dismissively, cutting off the actress mid-thought. "Oh, please, Meyer. Let's be honest here. You've made a career out of playing the same tortured woman over and over again. The tears, the speeches, the suffering artist act. Don't you think audiences are sick of watching you cry for 2 hours straight?" The studio froze. The air itself seemed to tighten as even the crew stopped in their tracks. Whoopi cleared her throat uncomfortably. Sarah buried her face in her notes, but Meyer's expression barely shifted. Her lips still curved into a polite smile, but her eyes sharpened with a flash of steel. "That's an interesting perspective, Joy," she said coolly. "But tell me, what in your mind qualifies as authentic storytelling? Because from where I sit, exploring emotion and vulnerability is exactly what art is meant to do." Joy leaned back, scoffing, her voice growing sharper. "Authentic? Authentic would be admitting you've been coasting on your reputation for years. Let's not pretend, Meyer. You get nominated for everything because of your name, not because the performances are that remarkable anymore. It's the emperor's new clothes, and nobody in Hollywood has the guts to say it." The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Even the audience stopped murmuring. This wasn't witty banter. It was hostile, personal, and shockingly unprofessional. Cameras kept rolling as Meyer calmly set down her glass of water and leaned forward, her voice steady but with unmistakable weight. "So, you're suggesting that my career recognition is nothing more than a conspiracy of reputation? That's fascinating. Tell me, Joy, what's your background in performance? What gives you the authority to make sweeping judgments about artistic craft?" Joy's cheeks flushed. She shot back defensively. "I don't need to be a chef to know when food tastes bad, Meyer. And I've been in this business long enough to know manufactured excellence when I see it." Meyer arched a brow, her tone razor sharp but calm. "This business?" she repeated. "You mean television hosting?" Because acting, real acting, demands vulnerability, discipline, and skill. It's not about sitting behind a desk and tossing out opinions. The shot landed. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Joy bristled. Whoopi tried to step in, her voice tentative. "Ladies, maybe we should talk about the film." But Joy wasn't about to surrender. She slammed forward in her chair, her voice rising. "Oh, here comes the superiority complex. You think because you've got a shelf of awards that you're untouchable? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I've been calling out Hollywood phonies long before you started doing those ridiculous accents in every movie." For the first time, Meyer's composure cracked, not with weakness, but with cutting resolve. She fired back, her words slicing clean through the noise. "Phonies? That's rich, coming from someone whose entire career is built on manufactured outrage and uninformed commentary. Authentic? You sit here every day throwing stones at artists, pretending it's insight when it's nothing more than noise." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Joy's mouth opened, but no quick comeback arrived. The studio audience gasped, some clutching the edges of their seats. Even the camera operators froze, unsure whether they were capturing the greatest disaster or the greatest television in The View's history. Joy finally managed to speak, her voice rising but trembling, just enough to betray the crack in her confidence. "I don't need to be an actor to know what I see. I've watched you play the same role over and over again, and Hollywood just hands you trophies for showing up." Her words were loud, but they felt defensive, hollow, desperate. Meyer didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her gaze locked on Joy like a laser. "That's a convenient excuse, Joy. But you're wrong. True critics, those who dedicate themselves to understanding craft, evaluate more than just surface impressions. They study nuance, they analyze choices, they see the layers. What you've offered here isn't critique, it's an insult. And not just to me, but to the very idea of what it means to create." The silence was suffocating. Whoopi pressed her lips together, clearly torn between stepping in and letting this play out. Sarah stared down at her papers as though she could disappear into them. The audience shifted nervously, whispering in disbelief. Joy laughed, but it was sharp and bitter. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? You've bought into your own legend. You stand on that pedestal and act like the rest of us should bow down." Meyer tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but cutting. "Untouchable? No, Joy, I've been criticized more times than you've spoken on this show, but I've been criticized by people who understood the work, people who could talk about depth, authenticity, and artistic risk. What you've given me is the equivalent of a heckler shouting from the cheap seats." Joy's face burned crimson. She shot back, louder this time. "Don't you dare dismiss me. I've been in this business for decades. I've earned my place here." "This business?" Meyer repeated again, her voice like ice. "If you mean the business of filling airtime with loud opinions, then yes, you've carved a space. But don't confuse it with artistry or with real contribution to culture. Because what you do, Joy, isn't creation, it's provocation. And there's a world of difference." The audience gasped audibly. Some clapped nervously, unsure whether they were allowed to react. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat, mumbling something under her breath that no one caught. Whoopi tried again. "All right, ladies, maybe we should—" But Meyer raised her hand slightly, silencing the room without even raising her voice. She turned back to Joy, her words calm, precise, devastating. "You want to talk about being in the business for decades? Let me ask you this. After all those years, what have you created? What do you have to show other than controversy and sound bites? When did you last risk yourself, your vulnerability, your heart, for the sake of art?" Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The audience was hanging on every word. The control room was in chaos, producers debating whether to cut to commercial or let the scene unfold. The tension was unbearable. Finally, Joy stammered, "I create conversation. I create dialogue. I ask the questions nobody else dares to ask." Meyer's voice was sharp and unwavering. "No, Joy. You don't create conversation. You create conflict. You confuse cheap shots with bravery and cruelty with honesty. There's nothing daring about tearing someone down with lazy insults. That's not journalism, it's spectacle." The audience erupted in scattered applause, and Joy's eyes widened as she realized the crowd wasn't with her. They were with Meyer. Joy leaned forward, her voice cracking under the pressure. "You think you're better than me, don't you? You sit there with your awards and your speeches, acting like you're above criticism." Meyer laughed softly, but the sound was cold, almost pitying. "Above criticism? Number. I've faced more criticism than you can imagine, but real criticism isn't about making yourself feel powerful by humiliating someone else. Real criticism requires understanding, courage, and yes, respect. You have mistaken cruelty for strength, Joy, and that mistake is why you'll never understand the art you mock. The studio was silent again. Even the crew had stopped moving. The camera zoomed closer, capturing Joy's pale face and Meyer's calm resolve. It was a tableau of power shifting in real time. Joy suddenly tried to regain ground by going for the jugular. Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. Cruel? You want cruel? Cruel is watching someone your age still clinging to leading roles, pretending to be relevant. Cruel is you parading around like you're giving the performance of a lifetime when all you're doing is the same tired routine in a different costume. The gasp from the audience was so loud it echoed. Sarah put a hand over her mouth. Whoopi muttered, "Oh my God," under her breath. Even the cameraman flinched, his lens wobbling for a split second. And then Meyer smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that radiated calm confidence. "Thank you, Joy," she said softly. "You've just proven my point better than I ever could." Joy blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" Meyer turned directly to the camera, her eyes locking with the millions watching at home. "This," she said, gesturing toward Joy, "is what happens when criticism is stripped of substance. When confronted with the limits of understanding, some people resort to insults about age, appearance, or relevance, but that's not criticism. It's insecurity. And now, you've all seen it for yourselves." The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Joy's face drained of color. For once, she had no retort, no comeback, no sharp remark to throw back. The silence on her end was louder than any words she could have spoken. Joy's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her note cards, her voice finally breaking through the storm of applause. "You think you can just walk onto my show and lecture me like some professor? This is the, View, Meyer, not one of your pretentious film festivals." Meyer's eyes narrowed. Her tone was calm, but every syllable landed like a hammer. "Your show? No, Joy, this isn't your kingdom. This belongs to the panel, to the viewers, to the people at home who expect honesty and respect. But you," she gestured lightly toward Joy, "you've turned it into a platform for cheap shots, and today you went too far." The audience gasped again, louder this time. Whoopi pressed her palms to the table, her frustration visible. "All right, enough." But neither woman was listening anymore. Joy leaned forward, her voice shrill with panic. "You don't get it. People tune in because of me. They like the controversy. They expect it. I say the things others are too afraid to say." Meyer tilted her head, pity flashing in her expression. "No, Joy. People don't tune in for cruelty. They tune in for conversation, for perspective, for debate. You've mistaken being loud for being brave, and being mean for being real. But let's tell the truth. Your relevance doesn't come from insight. It comes from tearing people down." The studio fell deathly still. Joy's face flushed crimson as the words hit her like a public unmasking. She sputtered, You don't," but Meyer pressed forward, relentless now. "You want tough questions? Here's one," Meyer continued, her eyes locked on Joy with laser focus. "In all your years of hosting, can you name a single moment where your confrontational style brought genuine understanding or inspired positive change? Just one. Go ahead. We'll wait." The silence was suffocating. Joy opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No answer came. Meyer leaned closer, her voice low, but carrying like a whisper through a megaphone. "Here's another question. What gives you the right to mock what you don't understand? What gives you the right to reduce decades of dedication, vulnerability, and artistry to a cheap punchline? Because the truth is, Joy, you're not challenging the powerful, you're punching down, and when history looks back, it won't remember your smirk or your insults. It will remember the harm you normalized by disguising cruelty as commentary." The audience erupted into stunned applause. Even Sarah, who had avoided eye contact for most of the exchange, nodded slowly, as if she couldn't deny the weight of Meyer's words. Joy slammed her note cards on the table, her voice cracking. "You're not going to sit here and make me the villain." Meyer rose from her chair, her presence towering even without raising her voice. "You don't need me to make you the villain, Joy. You've done that all on your own, and the cameras," she pointed toward the blinking red lights, "have captured every second of it." Joy's face turned pale, her smirk gone, her confidence shattered. For the first time in her long career, she looked small, cornered, and exposed. Whoopi finally muttered, "We're going to break." But before the producers could cut the feed, Meyer delivered her final devastating words. "Here's the tragedy, Joy. You believe controversy makes you relevant, but it's actually what's erasing you. Because when you reduce every conversation to insults, you don't elevate the dialogue, you poison it. And today, you didn't just expose me, you exposed yourself." With that, Meyer picked up her purse, turned on her heel, and walked off set as the audience leapt to their feet in thunderous applause. The sound was deafening, shaking the walls of the studio like a final verdict. Joy sat frozen, her hands trembling, her lips moving, but no words escaping. For the first time, the queen of quick comebacks had nothing, absolutely nothing. The cameras zoomed in on her stunned face before cutting abruptly to commercial. Millions at home had just witnessed not a segment, but a takedown so complete, so raw, that it instantly entered the history books of live television. When the show returned, Whoopi and Sarah did their best to salvage the moment, but the damage was irreversible. Social media exploded within minutes, hashtags trending worldwide. Clips spread like wildfire, with audiences dissecting every line, every look, every devastating blow. And as the dust settled, one undeniable truth remained. Joy Behar had gone head-to-head with Meyer Street and lost in the most spectacularly public fashion possible. The controversy didn't end in that studio. It was only the beginning. Headlines questioned Joy's future on The View, critics debated whether this was the end of an era, and fans wondered aloud if daytime TV had just witnessed its own downfall. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments in television aren't scripted, polished, or planned. Sometimes they happen when one woman decides she's had enough and refuses to let cruelty masquerade as truth ever again. What an absolutely unforgettable showdown. Now it's your turn. Comment your thoughts below and let us know where you stand on this explosive moment. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more stories just like this.